shop. We got another sled in for a track swap. This time we got 2019 XRS 850. It's got a 1.6 Ice Cobra on it, and the thing just turned 4,000 miles. Here in Vermont, that's about the lifespan of these Cobra tracks. The lugs are pretty soft. You know, a lot of times we have a pretty minimal base to our trails, so the lugs just take a beating. And we can go over here. So a bunch of lugs are starting to tear right off of this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and replace it with a 1.5 Camso Storm. We got a bunch of studs to go into it too. We're gonna be running one of these awesome snow studs traction packages here. They come with everything you need to do your install: the drill tool, the marker, the template, the studs, backers, nuts, everything. Whole package, one kit, off you go. I've covered a few of the Polaris track swaps and stuff, but I haven't done a Skidoo one yet on the channel, so I'm gonna go ahead, dig into this one, and show you guys how it goes. This thing's here for a preseason check over as well. First thing I've noticed is we got a little drip of brake fluid here. It appears to be coming from the reservoir over the, like out of the seal here. I'm gonna go ahead, pull the cover off, check into that. The fluid looks pretty dirty too. I'm gonna go ahead and look back and see if we did that last year and maybe the seal is bad and it's got some moisture in there or something like that. But notice that drip and give it a little check. It's definitely brake fluid, so we're gonna look into that. And then as far as doing the track swap on the Skidoo and getting the driver out and everything, it's pretty much similar to the Polaris one, right? You gotta get the exhaust off of here, you gotta get the muffler out, Chaincase cover off, the gears, that's pretty much the same. Tensioner, top gear, top gear's bolted, bottom's got a snap ring. Similar stuff, right, on this side. The other side with the brake, since the Skidoo runs down the driver, that's kind of the only tricky part to the Skidoo track driver swap scenario is you gotta kind of, once you undo the C-clip for the brake rotor, you have to press or pull the caliper itself off of the bearing, because the caliper itself is the bracket and housing that bolts to the tunnel, which then supports and houses the bearing for the driver. So I'll cover that in decent detail over there on that side when we get to it. I'm gonna do a little bit of the time-lapse stuff of getting the exhaust and some foothold things and random bits off of here, and then I'll try to do more of like a video in-depth commentary type description thing as I go along, pulling apart the kind of trickier sections. All right, there is the light. So there's a little bit of a mouse house kind of thing down in here that I don't really want to touch because it looks awfully fucking wet and oh, that's gross, dude. Oh, what is that? Why is it so moist? That's nasty, bro. I don't even know what that was. Was that a dryer sheet, maybe? I almost think that might have been a... Well, how do you got it in there? Oh, that was a bad idea. Why did I do that? All right, getting this whole section to this point is pretty straightforward. The only little tricky thing that's not even that tricky, sometimes depending on how you have the sled lifted, let me do this, there we go. Sometimes depending on how you have the sled lifted and whatnot, there'll be a little bit of pressure on this bracket inward. That can make this 10 millimeter bolt a little bit hard to get out. So what I do is I just kind of rest a foot on here. And as I'm working it out, like you can even see, well, can you? Yeah, you can see how much that moves with just me pushing on it. So using your foot, you can kind of adjust the pressure on that and get that bolt to spin out easy without any side pressure on it. Because if you do have a lot of pressure inward or outward, as that bolt comes out, it could strip the very end of the threads on this aluminum case here. So that's the only thing to be kind of careful of and pay attention to pulling this out. For those of you that might store your sled outside or kind of under a cover, not in a trailer, It is pretty common for these things to get a bunch of dirt and sticks and stuff down in this footwell, so clean that out before you open the chain case up. Otherwise, your fluid might not drain out too well, and it'll come pool up in here and run into the belly pan and make more of a mess than necessary. This sled is a quick adjust one, obviously, as you can see here, so we gotta end up pulling all this apart. Top portion, the plastic stuff is super easy. You gotta take the knob off and then undo these bracketry jobbers here. Then you have the actual cable support bracket underneath, which is riveted. So when we get to that point, we'll show you what I end up doing there. It's kind of tricky. Sometimes the factory rivets are a pain. I switch all of them over to aluminum after, and this one has been apart before. But when you get to them, you oftentimes have to hold the bottom of it with a set of pliers or something like that to keep the rivet from spinning around. We'll get there. Oh no! You can see you just undo those two rivets there, drill those things out. The stock ones, like I said, are kind of a pain. You got to get some pliers from the bottom and hold the body of the rivet, keep them spinning, but they don't give you much meat to grab onto. So if it's the first time coming apart, that might be a little bit of a pain. But other than that, fish this down through here. If you want to remove this bracket entirely, you can drill that rivet there and then the hose comes out. You don't need to though. You can just kind of leave it like this, and then you end up putting it inside the skid up in there and just letting it kind of hang out like that. I'm gonna try to not bonk my head here while I'm talking about this region back here. Getting the track out or getting the suspension out on the R-Motions is a little bit tricky. They kind of have a pre-tension on them where the rear torque arm wants to come backwards some. So what I used to do and may still have to do, we're gonna find out in a little bit, is I'll ratchet strap around the torsion spring and the rear torque arm to the front torque arm to kind of pull that together so that this rear bolt comes out. We're gonna do a little crab walking deal. The rear torque arm kind of has a tension where it wants to come backwards under free fall, whatever, I don't know. Rear arm wants to go backwards, so I ratchet strap it to the front one here. A friend of mine told me to loosen the rear axle and then tighten the track tension a lot. And I get it, because when you push that wheel back, right, it's gonna bring the track down and it's gonna kind of tension all of this and keep this in the same spot. I'm gonna try it. I don't know if it's gonna work as good as the ratchet strap ordeal. It's definitely less work than fishing a ratchet strap on each side and messing around in here because it's kind of tight and whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna try that track tension method and see if that works for going out, and then if it does, it should in theory work, right, going back in. So let's find out. All right, you're also gonna need 7/8 slim wrench like this, slim, thin, however you get the point, to get up in here, to go between this outer bracket and the little link rod here. There we go. You don't have much room there. I know some people have definitely gone and cut wrenches down and ground them and narrowed them up. This is a pretty old snap-on piece here. We'll do this number. You can get the part number. No clue if that's still gonna supersede anything because the font on this looks like it's the 90s, early 2000s font. So yeah, they'll have something that crosses to it. Man, that track tension thing works slick. That's pretty sweet. Stepping on impact. It's not good. And otherwise, up front, it's pretty much just like I do the Polaris's. I put the jack in there to support the front of it, blast the two bolts out, drop it down. The Skidoos do have more rivets and stuff in here in this brace, so it can be kind of tricky getting that front torque arm out depending on the angles and where your jack is and how exactly you're doing it. Sometimes they get hung up on those rivets and the brace plate in there, but move it all around, it'll come out eventually. These front bolts should not be big 1/2 inch impact tight, but since I have it out, I'm just using it. Yeah, the 3/8 would have been fine, but like I said, it's out. Then you can see with the jack under there and that's supported how easily this comes out of here. You can see it held itself in there. And then, like I said, you just wiggle it enough and it'll fall out of there. Going back in is the fun part. That's where you gotta side to side wedge it up in there, but whatever. Even though we did slides on this thing last year, this side over here took it really hard in our low snow last year. Actually, they both did. Right between the idlers here where the track ripples up. That side over there, the right side, is down about 1/8 of an inch. I'm gonna go drag this thing over there, hose it all down, clean it up. Moving on, taking your chain case cover off. Once you get the bolts undone and stuff, you got a little tab here. You just kind of got to bend the coolant bottle up out of the way. But you got all the T30 perimeter bolts, and then you got a T40 here with a bunch of Loctite and a little crush washer on it, and then a T40 back here with a bunch of Loctite on it. I pretty much loosen up all the cover bolts, or all the perimeter ones. I take this T40 out, and then I loosen this one. So I back the T30s out quite a ways. And then I back this one out to let that cover start opening up to go ahead and start draining. All right, again, once you get the cover, all the bolts off and everything, circling back to that little foot trick I mentioned earlier about putting pressure down, that helps get the cover out too, gives you a little bit more room around the wiring and stuff like that on this bracket to go ahead and pivot that thing out of there. So, end up doing this number here, get that out from that, and then you can just whoop, right up and out. All right, got your cover off. Next up is loosen the chain tension, and then we're gonna move on to the snap ring down here. Snap ring off, and the gear will slide right off. When it comes to the chain tension, there's a clip back here. You don't need to do anything with this clip unless you have a sled that someone else has already messed the clip up. The clip goes back here behind this. All the clip does is it rides on a flat on the bolt. So that is your little bit of a detent there. Every time you spin it, you'll hear it click as it kind of spins past that flat. This pin goes back here. It doesn't go in this hole. If you move it in the hole, you have no adjustment because the pin hits. And then you got to fish the pin out and all that. Leave the pin where it is. My O-ring's getting tired on my wobbly here. Not really keeping it straight, but yeah. That's all you gotta do. And you just spin that out. You don't need to do anything with the pin, like I said, unless someone has already moved it to the wrong spot. Ta-da! I'm a little bit of a knothead. I should have opened this up. I mean, I've had it for like 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days? A week? About a week, actually, yeah. I had this thing for like about a week, and it's usually good practice to get them opened up and out of the box so that they can kind of try to come back to their original shape and not this big curly Q that they're stuffed into the box like. You get one, you're planning on doing this, maybe you track early, get it out of the box, fold it open, let it sit for a little while. It does make it easier sometimes getting the driver and the whole skid and everything back in there. Shout out to Tracks USA. This is where I get all the tracks for any customer job or my personal stuff. Anytime you put an order in online, they call you like almost immediately to double check the fitment and make sure that your drive pitch and all the sizing and everything is correct. They pretty much, if it's in stock, it pretty much in my experience goes out the same day. Sometimes the next day if you order late, they crush it every single time. So shout out to Tracks. Time to start pulling the brake side apart. Moving on to this, I pop the belt off, gives you a little bit more clearance on this bolt here. So there's 10mm bolt with a 10mm nut, and then your 210s here. Your footrest will come off. Remove the 10s, and then there's a Torx down here. Yank that thing off of there, and then you again have a snap ring that holds the rotor on. That snap ring can be a bear because there's an O-ring that's supposed to be back there to keep tension and keep the brake rotor from knocking and rattling around on the splines. So sometimes that snap ring can be a pain in the ass. However, this sled has all been apart already, and the driver bearing has been serviced and all that stuff. So it should all come apart relatively easily. Rotor cover and everything is off. Next up, you're gonna wanna remove your pads and everything out of here. There's this little retainer. So the bolt has a little, like a slot kind of deal. Retainer pops right out of there. The retainer is just one of these little hairpin clippy doos. And then continue on, 5 mil here, blast that out. Pads come out towards the bottom and then out this way. And then there's our C-clip. Now here we've got our main retainer bolts. You take those bolts out, and then there's a twist lock ring on the backside that houses the actual threaded portion. So that kind of sandwiches the tunnel, unlock the ring on the backside once the bolts are out, and then there's a whole puller tool to get the caliper off of the bearing. This one is relatively new-ish. The bearing was replaced not too long ago, so it should kind of come off of there without a ton of force, but they can be really bad. I've broken the tool before where the big tool that has the bolt in the middle and all that to pull on it, I've split that tool right in half with some rusted ones. They can be miserable. All right, this lower one's a pain. Your regular bit and ratchet doesn't fit down in there because of the spacing. So I end up using this. This is just a little snap-on T40 bit that goes to a 10 mil hex. So you can fish this down in here. Get that in there and then use one thumb, push it in. And yep, off you go. Tab there is the inner retainer ring. There's another tab just like that on the bottom. That ring has to rotate this way and then it slides right out. 2 of those, reach up in, slide it back, off you go. So I was able to get that caliper to move a little bit just by walking it with my hand, but it's not just popping right off, which is a good thing. You don't want that. You want to actually hold that bearing. But I did get it to move a little. I mean, this is just flat stock. This is one that I made, because the other one is a little bit big and bulky and a little cumbersome. This, for ones like here where they're gonna come apart pretty easy, this is the way to go. It's just like 1/2 inch flat stock, 3 holes in it. Like that. Get our blown out cattywampus washer that's been blown apart 8,000 times. And then yeah, you just, I say that, but I know there's some of you that are gonna end up doing this and it's gonna be a really rusty, miserable one. And you can break this tool and everything. Yeah, so that came right off. That's all we gotta do there. Again, they're not all gonna go like this one just did. Once you do that, you can reach under, push the driver back again, and then you need to walk the rotor and the caliper thing all together as a unit like this. And fish it all up out of there. So there's your rotor. Whoop, whoop. Whack it. This number. Ow! Rude. Ta-da! Get. Ugh. A little close up of that retainer plate I mentioned. These are the tabs that come through the tunnel and twist lock into place. And then your caliper bolts go through here, and that sandwiches the tunnel in the middle and locates this bearing inside your brake caliper. Can't really think of a whole lot more to go over right now while it's all apart. So I'm gonna get out of here, go get my workout in, then get on to some editing throughout the rest of the night. We'll pick this back up tomorrow morning and start the reassembly process. Back in here today, it's late. It's not that late, but it's 1:30. I haven't been in the shop yet today. Did a bunch of editing this morning. for not sled related, not my channel related stuff. Got some other things going on that will come out eventually, but whatever. So yeah, went to get the parts for this XRS, went out to the dealership, out to Land Air in Essex, grabbed some slides, ran into Pat out there. We're like, hey, it's almost a holiday, let's go get lunch. So we went and got lunch, and now I'm back in here, right? Gonna get my ass in gear and get this thing back together, get the track in, driver back in, all that stuff. I'm gonna kind of time lapse through the reassembly process because I covered the majority of it pretty well on the disassembly. The reassembly is just the opposite, right? Once everything's back together, I gotta go ahead and stud that track. I'm not gonna cover that in this video. If you wanna see like basically my process on how I do the studding stuff, you can go back a few videos to the Comp Turbo when I studded that. This is essentially gonna be the exact same thing, except I'm not using the Stud Boy Pro Light backers. I'm using just a traditional backer and a nut on this, so it should go together a little bit quicker because I don't have to drill the stud in from the inside. I can drill the hole, insert the stud, and then blast the nut on from the outside. So I'm not gonna cover that. But if you want to see my process, go back and check the other one out. Off I go. All right, I'm pausing right here and not filling the chain case right now because the back of the sled is up in the air and the thing should be level when you fill the chain case. So leaving the fill hole open so I know that I haven't put chain case fluid in it yet. I'm gonna go on, get the skid stuff back in it and all that bolted back up, let the sled down, then do the chain case level, and then move on to the exhaust, cleaning the clutches. Track is all done on this XRS. Going ahead now, I'm doing all the studying and stuff, but like I said, I'm not really going to touch on that in this video. It's pretty much going to wrap up here. Hopefully that helps someone. I know the G5 has been out for a while and there's a lot of track swapping videos, but just trying to get more stuff up on the channel and kind of create that content base there for everyone to go back and, you know, maybe it's going to help you with a different aspect of doing something on a G4 or whatever. But either way, it's something for you guys to check out. Hopefully it kind of helps bridge the gap. I know the season's been a really slow start and we're all kind of in that low snow condition, and I got one good ride in and one good video out, but until we get more snow, I'm kind of stuck in the shop just doing the maintenance deal and doing the work stuff. So Hopefully I can get out and maybe make a trip way up into Canada sometime soon if things don't improve around here, just to get some more riding content going, but time will tell. So let's all hope for snow.